Hello guys, Sign here with Hobbies Man, and once again it's time to look more into the Wheel of Time. We're going to be looking at Shadow Racing Part 3, which is chapters 31 through 40 something. Let me double check here. 46, and it's basically page 490 to 741. So that would be this section right here at the back of the book. And overall, pretty good stuff. I really enjoyed this part of the story. At this point, it's actually been quite a few weeks since I recorded my last video, even though it has only recently come up. And I'm actually also done with the Fires of Heaven. So this is going to be kind of my thoughts, pretty removed from the thoughts that I had back then. So this is going to be read off my notes, so it's not going to be my fresh take. I will try to be better about that when I start reading Lords of Chaos, but who knows when that will be. So yeah, my general thoughts while reading this were actually that it was really, really great. I really enjoyed it. I was hyped as fuck reading this. And this portion of the story was really, really great. I personally really enjoyed the Perrin aspect. I thought that was the most enjoyable. And that is because he's kind of in the thick of things. He is really actually fighting and continuously trying to survive, right? He's kind of dealing with things directly, purposefully in front of him. And there's a certain level of frankness to the way that Perrin's story is going, compared to Nynaeve and Elaine's story, which is kind of more of a skulking around type story, kind of hiding and weaving through situations and trying to avoid detection. That stuff is fun and interesting, but it usually ends up devolving into Elaine and Nynaeve bickering. And though I really love Nynaeve's character, I think she functions better introspectively than when she's interacting with characters, at least up to this book. Although I do still love Nynaeve. She's probably my favorite character up to this point. Although sometimes she is kind of grating, right? And then Rand's sort of the story. It's a lot more mystical feeling to me, but also it feels less exciting because a lot of it is also kind of like, not necessarily interpersonal conflict, which I generally find pretty enjoyable, but it's more like political conflict. And so it's Rand trying to make moves in order to make everyone else around him make moves that he needs, but he's also not good at doing that. So a lot of times he just kind of gets like verbally manhandled by Vienda and Egwene and Moiraine and the Wise Ones. And so it's not necessarily super satisfying for me to read that. And so I find Perrin's part of the story to be the best part, and honestly, maybe my favorite storyline so far. I mean, I really enjoyed the storyline of the first book in general, and I remember a lot of moments in The Great Hunt, like I said before, and I do think that the third book was probably my favorite up to this point, but or up to the point where when I was reading this part of the story. But I do think that that has changed at this point, mostly because of Perrin's storyline. So yeah, the rundown here, starting with the arrival at the sick house, where Perrin arrives to the sick house that's kind of off to the side of Emond's Field, gets permission to enter thanks to the warders that are there, and then has a confrontation with Verin and Alana. And I think he's not necessarily antagonistic with Verin specifically, but he is generally antagonistic with Alana, and that is because Alana is a lot more like Moiraine. She does try to kind of maneuver people with her words, whereas Verin is just mostly interested in observing, even if she kind of also pushes people around. She does it a lot less obnoxiously, I guess is the right way to word it there. And so I enjoyed this confrontation here. Then he gets to meet up with Tam and Abel, which are Rand and Mat's fathers. And I enjoy that they're not necessarily just grown-up versions of their sons. They're their own separate characters. I really like that. You know, as someone that mostly reads anime and manga, you do kind of get that kind of thing there where they simplify the characters a lot beyond, you know, kind of just simplifying them for the sake of books or for the sake of story. And so usually father figures, sorry, there's a fly and I'm trying to catch it with my hands. Sorry. They do actually end up making their children, the children of characters, or maybe the parents of characters, to basically be a grown-up version of them. And I think that that's one thing I really like about Western novels usually, is that they do try to make them separate characters. And so I really enjoy that here. I really enjoy Tam and Abel, and the way that they eventually just become kind of Perrin's generals, in a sense. I would kind of say they fill the same kind of place that Ruach and who else is it? There's someone else that helps Rand as well. So I really enjoy their dynamic there. We get to see that the White Cloaks are infighting, especially because Ordieth, or Padan Fain, is kind of sowing issues there. And then we see Perrin gather the forces that have inadvertently, kind of gotten around him to save the captives. And actually, I think it goes the other way. Perrin sets out with Tam and Abel, and then along the way, he gathers a force by accident, or by being a Taviran, whatever you might want to call it, where they end up at the Alcine farm, and Perrin's nature, his Taviran-ness, leads to him bringing a point up, which is, why are you staying here? If you want to live and survive, go to where other people are and develop a force together instead of having to deal with it separately, right? And they initially don't want to see sense, and then that Luke guy, the weird hunter of the horn that probably isn't a hunter. I honestly think he is the Slayer, although there hasn't been a clarification of that as of yet, even into the fifth book. But I do think he is a Slayer. I think it's kind of implied pretty clearly later on, but this guy kind of sows dissension there. But eventually, Perrin's point lands, and it is that you guys are already holed up here with a bunch of people, so you might as well do that on a larger scale. So go to Emond's Field, and along the way, he does this for a few other families, and some of the young men from those families manage to stay with Perrin in order to go to save the captives, right? And he's basically pushing everyone towards Emond's Field. The group of boys join him, like I said, and Lord Luke, or Luke, I guess is what his name is, but it's spelled Luck. It's a problem, and Perrin becomes the leader of this band of men in the Two Rivers, and they all kind of follow him. And they save the folks. They save the people that they needed to save, which are Perrin's adoptive family, which is the Luhans, or the Luhans, the people that taught him to be a blacksmith. It also involves Matt's family, his mom and his sisters, and a few other people. I can't remember exactly who, but basically that's what happens there. Then we move back to Rand and Matt, where they're coming out of Ruiden, and Rand is definitely he who comes with dawn. He has the two dragon marks on his arms, which are really, really cool conceptually. They're kind of this like Asian dragon, right? Like kind of more of a Shenlong kind of dragon, or Shenron kind of dragon. And they kind of go across his arms. I'm actually kind of curious to know if there's any, Wheel of Time people that have those kind of tattoos put into their skin. Of course, it wouldn't be exactly the same because his are kind of like spun with gold. They're actually like glittering scales almost, which are pretty interesting. And he's kind of disappointed with the reaction. He thought that he was going to have people immediately happy and kneeling for him, and that's not really exactly what happens here because of the Aiel kind of cultural thing. He is the Karakarn, he is the chief of chiefs, he is he that comes with the dawn, but he is not a king in their eyes. He is not necessarily who they owe direct fealty to, or who they are going to give, kind of their heart and soul to. He is still just a man that happens to have more power in terms of the society than the average person. And I think that's pretty interesting. It really helps him kind of maintain a certain level of groundedness, because in many other stories at this point, Rand would just be the leader and the king, and there would be no other issues. It would just exist and be, and he wouldn't really have to deal with anything. But with Robert Jordan's kind of interest in minutia and detail and pedanticness, it allows for a lot of interesting moments here, right? So I really enjoy this part as well. And then it turns out that Rand is kind of rushing, and he wants to leave, and he realizes that he's been gone for 7 days, and that there's 3 more days to go before Aviendha and Moiraine can be kind of called dead or gone, and so they have to continue waiting. And so nearly at the end of that time period, they come back, and so now we're ready to move on. And it turns out that Aviendha is doing the first part of the test to be a wise one, and Moiraine, I guess, is also doing the first part of the test, but that part of the test is all she needs. She gains knowledge from that, thanks to something the wise ones say. And so this knowledge comes into play in the next book, and so it's pretty meaningful there. The stuff that happens here, even if it doesn't get explained at all until much later. Then Rand gets told about his family, about his father, Judian, I think is his name, and his mother, Shail, who is actually someone from Andor. She was an Andorian woman, I think. I don't know her name, but she was known as as Shail when she was with the Aiel, and she became a maiden of the spear. She, far as my dies, or whatever they're called, she became one of them. She joined them, and then she and her Aiel husband died when they went to war with Carian. So yeah. Also, one thing to note here is that do the Aiel know that Moiraine is Carian, or do they not care because her status as Aes Sedai supersedes that? Because it seems like they have an issue with Carianans, and it doesn't ever come up when it concerns Moiraine. So I'm curious about that. Although I guess Moraine's origin doesn't really matter too much. I mean, I guess there is a connection there that comes into play eventually, but at this point, I don't think it matters too much. So I guess it never is important. But I would feel like there should be some level of friction there between the Aiel wise ones and Moiraine, and also maybe between Moiraine and the usual Aiel, men that fight for Rand, right? So I'm not really sure. I don't know how that works there. So yeah, let's see. Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine all get to Tel Aranriad, or whatever it's called, the land of the dreams. And then Egwene gets pulled out by Amis and gets taken to task for not following the rules. Eventually, I think they smooth out their issue and they move on, but Egwene has to deal with the ramifications of that for a while. And then there turns out to be this Aiel plot. And not the Aiel that follow Rand, but rather this other guy, Couladin, I think is his name, who wants to usurp power, basically, but not following the rules that should be followed. And so what happens here is that he kind of tries to mess with Rand, but it doesn't really work, and so they all leave. And then they meet the peddlers, and the peddlers are suspicious. Rand more or less immediately knows that they're dark friends, but he can't really put his finger on it, and something about them rubs him the wrong way. But they let them go with them, and it is what it is. It happens to be important there, to not be important enough to deal with there, right? So they move on. They stop at Imra's stand, where it turns out that it's been attacked. It's been attacked by Trollocs, and no one believes this, but it is what it is. And then it turns out that it is actually what happens. Trollocs do attack again, and this is after Rand has been learning sword and spear from Ruach and Lan. And after Jason Nuttall talks to Rand, and Jason Nuttall happens to be a Glee man, although he's also suspicious, and it turns out to be a pretty meaningful moment for Rand to meet this guy. And then we return to Tanchico in terms of the story, and Egyanin is a Shanchan, which is a pretty interesting moment here, and it seems like it's a pretty important kind of thing because it kind of starts to unravel the Shan-chan's kind of dogmatic kind of views on the world. And she is the first one of these people to kind of experience that firsthand. And it's a pretty meaningful thing. I'm guessing that this is going to come into play much later on. And then we see that there's this dark friend meeting. And then Egyanin meets with a truth seeker, which is a member of Shan-chan society that are kind of inquisitors or something like that. Some sort of policing force that is kind of outside of the law, but within a certain rank, they are affected. And so this is kind of meaningful there because this becomes a adversary to Egyanin. And then the girls arrive, they meet Bail Daman, the guy from the boat, and then they go to the tavern, and they go to bed, and then Nynaeve finds Egwene again. They meet Brigitte, or Bridget, I guess. I'm going to say it like they say it in Overwatch, so Brigitte. And then something happens with Nynaeve. She meets a man that looks just like Lan, who attacks her. And she's immediately scared by this because, one, Lan is supposed to be the only person of his race/people to exist. Whether his race is different from the Shienarans is up to debate. I'm not really sure. And if it is, I'm not really sure how different they would be, because I'm pretty sure they're from the same like region of the world. But people that look like Lan should no longer exist because he is the last one. Even the Ai will have a special name for him. So she gets scared by this. This is a problem for her, right? So yeah, eventually we return to Perrin's story. So Perrin has now been dubbed Perrin Golden Eyes, which is a pretty cool name. I have to say it's a pretty cool thing to be called. And he is also the Trolloc hunter. And they sadly end up in a trap. And this trap is actually sprung by the Trollocs. And it's also kind of heralded by Lord Luck, I think. I think he mentioned something before it happens. I can't remember the details here, but he gets stuck in a kind of a pincer maneuver where the Trollocs are supposed to be situated one way, but actually end up being behind them. And so they get attacked from behind. It becomes kind of a rout situation. And eventually, Perrin and his people manage to survive the attack, but they do suffer some losses. And this is the first defeat that Perrin faces. And so it also happens to be the first major moment where Perrin becomes a leader. And I really enjoy this. Technically, the first time that Perrin becomes a leader would actually be when he convinces the Alcine to leave their house. But this is the first moment where he becomes a military leader. And I really enjoy this part of the story because it is a pretty meaningful thing. Like, he's already wrestled with the fact that he's killed. He's already wrestled with the fact that he doesn't want to kill, but he must. That is the duty that has been placed on his shoulders. And now he's dealing with the fact that being a leader, being someone that hunts, the darkness, does not mean that he's going to be perfect from the start, that there's issues that are going to come up. And those issues are the fact that he is leading men to their deaths. And sometimes that's difficult to reconciliate with, right? To be able to understand. And so I really enjoy the growth for Perrin a lot. I really enjoy his story quite a bit. So, they win. They're all heavily injured. And they actually meet the Tinkers. And there's this moment where he recognizes this group of Tinkers because it's Aram and Elia. And I can't remember Aram's dad's name. Ruel, I think is his name. And he meets them. He gives them the right kind of words in order to kind of finish their greeting kind of ritual. And this surprises the men that follow him. I'm not really sure why. No one explains what it is, but I'm guessing it's because there's a certain level of worldliness that comes with being able to answer the Tuathan correctly. And I think that's pretty interesting. It's also kind of a cool, neat kind of moment for for Perrin to meet these people that at one point brought him so much help and peace and also so much doubt, to meet them at a moment where he needs all of those things, where he has doubt, but he needs peace, where he needs kind of another lesson in violence, and when it is okay to do it and when it is not, and kind of a balancing force. So I really like that. I thought that was really, really good stuff there. I really enjoyed their meeting, and then he tells them, hey, you guys can come to the Two Rivers, to Emmons Field as well. I will make sure that no one harms you. But they decide to not do that. They don't want to deal with the difficulties of village life. They would rather stay on their wagons, even if they are dangerous. And so they go on their way, and Fail and Perrin share their secrets with each other because Aram accidentally spilled the beans about the fact that he has a wolf stuff going on. And then he goes into the wolf dream. He gets a little bit more information there, and then he actually ends up taking over the Two Rivers. He becomes the Lord of the Two Rivers, which is kind of a nebulous title. It's not one that he likes, but it's also one that might bring issues later because they are technically under the Andorian flag. And so this might be a problem later, but I'm sure it's not going to be that big of a deal. And so far, I don't think it's come up. So, yeah. And he gets healed. And then Trollocs attack again. And the story here ends with the Tinkers seeking refuge after quite a few chapters of them saying that they would not, and then disappearing for a while, and then they come back, and then here Aram falls from his way, because if we remember from book 1, he wasn't really ever super into it. Like, he followed it because it was all he knew, but there was kind of a push that needed to happen in order to get him out of it. And his mother dying, Trollocs attacking and decimating his people is the right thing that he needed to be pushed out. And there's this kind of really meaningful moment here where Perrin doesn't want to give Aram the tools for violence, but he knows that there is nothing he can do to change his mind. And so eventually, even though it hurts him to do so, he does give him access to a sword. And so this causes a rift between Perrin and some of the Tuathan, but it is ultimately something that I think is relatively meaningful for the growth of these characters, right? And it also is very important because this directly parallels stuff that Rand saw in Rudian. So I really enjoy that. I think that's a really, really meaningful story. In the flashbacks that Rand sees, it's a woman that sees her family killed and then decides to take up the spear, and so she becomes the first shield maiden, or spear maiden, I guess. And in this case, it's a man seeing his family killed, and so he takes up a sword, which is something that the Aiel should not touch. And it is also something relatively important for the Tuathan, I think, because we also learned that the Tuathan and the Aiel are the same people, right? So I really enjoy this parallelism that's happening here. It's really, really good stuff. And then eventually the story, this part of the story ends with the White Cloaks showing up and then actually entering into the Emmons Field village because Perrin tells them that, one, it's going to be better for everyone if they're there, and also that way they can keep an eye on Perrin throughout their process, right? So overall, really, really good stuff here. I really enjoyed everything that was happening here, and I had a great time reading this part of the book. Honestly, like I said, Perrin's story was my favorite part of the Shadow Rising, and I really, really enjoyed everything that I read. So there you go. That's my thoughts on this part of the story. Hopefully you guys liked it, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought, and thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.